Awesome. Well, hey, we are in this series called what? Deep. That's deep. So we're in this series called Deep, and we've been talking about the different things that help us to grow deeper in our faith, the things that help us become deeper as individuals as it pertains to our relationship with each other and with God. And how do we get to a point where we would consider our faith deep? You know, if I ask many of you right now, is your faith with God deep, or is it just surface level? Is it just kind of the stuff we talk about in church, and then you don't really ever think about it outside of that? It just doesn't really resonate with you. You want to, but if you're honest, you kind of feel apathetic, which means you don't really care, but you want to care. And so how do you get to that point where your faith is actually deep, where it's meaningful, where it's more than just the words that you say or the songs that you sing on a Sunday, but it's actually who you are? How do we get to a point to where our faith is in that position? All right, when I was in 8th grade, so where are my 8th graders at? How many 8th graders we got in here? Awesome. When I was in 8th grade, my friend group had changed within the last year or two. And so I had some friends that, it wasn't anything bad, they used to be my friend, but now I hate them, or something like that. It's just we just grew kind of apart. We had different interests, and so my friend groups had kind of changed. I still kept some of the same friends, but a lot of them had kind of turned over. And then when it came to my 8th grade year, I had my very first girlfriend. And man, I was feeling studly. I got this girl, beautiful, bleach blonde hair, moved from California the summer before, the beginning of 8th grade year. I made her my girlfriend, right? And I was feeling pretty good about myself, you know. And this strange thing happened. We broke up. and so if just a side note, if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend right now, statistically, you're not going to be with them forever. And some of you know that. Some of you are still daydreaming, oh, well, I'm going to marry this person someday. Well, you probably won't. And so don't do anything now that you don't want to have to explain to a future boyfriend or girlfriend, because odds are it's just not going to last. And so when I found myself in that position in 8th grade, after dating this girl for 4 months, and we broke up, and the reason I broke up with her was because I felt guilty, because my dad was the youth minister, okay? So he got her parents to come and talk to our Sunday school class about how dating in middle school is dumb and how it won't last. And I was front and center as my girlfriend's dad was talking about how dating in middle school. So my self-esteem was slowly dropping. I was sinking in my seat, and everybody around me was, nudging me and oh, Zach, he's talking to you. And I broke up with her that week. I go, hey, we should just be friends. And I didn't want to break up with her, but I felt weird. I felt guilty all of a sudden. And then so I lost that. Then like I said, my friend groups had kind of changed. So I can look back on that now and I can think, it was a little tough time in my life. But at the moment, my whole world was falling apart. My self-esteem was dropping because, I was single again, right? And that's not good for your social price. And so I realized, I didn't have that beautiful girlfriend anymore. A lot of my friends had kind of moved on, different friends, and I found myself in a really tough position. And I don't know if you're there yet. I don't know if anything like that has happened, but if you're anything like me, then maybe you can relate. But as you guys walked in, I had a lot of you, some of you I missed because you already came in before I started doing this, but I had a lot of you fill out some just anonymous cards. I had you write down something that's going on in your life or someone that you know that's tough. Something that's tough that you're going through. And I had you write it down, just put it in here. So I want to just share with you what some of you in this room have said. And it was anonymous, so I don't know who any of these people are, but let's see, one of you wrote, dealing with a breakup. So that is something real that you guys are going through. Let's see what else. Stress. That's something tough that you got. Middle school is tough. Your academic career is getting more difficult. There's higher expectations, and that can add a lot of stress. Anxiety. Something that you guys are dealing with. Okay? Gone to a new school and having trouble making friends. Man, that's incredibly tough. What else we got here? I'm not going to read all these, but just a few more. Someone just lost their dad. Sorry to hear that. Can't imagine. Okay, an injury, a knee injury. Makes it hard when you're trying to play sports. Cancer. I'm not going to keep going, but I mean, this is just people in this room, either you in here or someone that you know, struggling with these issues. So when we talk about this on Sunday mornings, it's not just fluff. It's not just like, oh, I think I know how you're feeling. It's like, no, these are real issues that you guys are going through, and it's tough. And here's why this is so important. Why this whole series is so important is because life can present tough situations. And if you're not there yet, then there's something you need to know. Eventually, life gets hard for all of us. Maybe you don't relate to any of the things that were on any of those cards. Maybe you wrote down something different and put it in there, and it was someone you knew. It wasn't even something you were going through. But eventually, life gets hard for everybody. And in fact, that's the guarantee that we have. Right? It's not a guarantee that any of us are going to find true lasting happiness. It's not a guarantee that we'll find joy in the Lord. It's not a guarantee that our friendships will last forever. As many of you know, it's not a guarantee even that our marriages will last forever. It seems to be no different outside of the church than it is in the church sometimes. So the one guarantee that we do have is that eventually life will get hard for you. If you're not there yet, you will. And so I don't mean to say this like to be a downer and just remind you of all the crappy things going on in your lives, but I'm saying this because this is really important, especially going through those tough seasons. In church, sometimes we call it like the storms of life because it's just how we feel. You know, Scripture uses these metaphors, so we often use them here in church when we're talking about these things. When you go through a storm, it's hard to see. I was driving back from Joplin, Missouri over this break. We just got back from Thanksgiving at my parents' house, and that's an 8-hour drive, okay? And we have a screaming baby who does not sit still in the car. So we drive at night in order to let him sleep so that we can drive in peace. But that means that our eyes are getting heavy and it's hard to stay awake. And on our way back, it was like this constant mist of rain. It wasn't like downpouring, but it wasn't like dry either. It was like this mist. So, and the windshield wipers are kind of damaged. So it made it really hard to see. And when you're going through storms in life, it's really hard to see where you're going. It's hard to see where the hope is. It's hard to see what the purpose is. Are you even heading in the right direction? And these circumstances can either push you towards God or away from Him. These circumstances can either push you towards God or away from Him. And here's the thing. We all, like we said, we all have tough hands dealt to us at times. So it's what we do with those and where our foundation is that will make the difference. These storms can either wreck you or they can save you. When we look through Scripture, when we look through the Gospel of John, John is writing about the life of Jesus, and he was one of Jesus' closest disciples, as we've talked about before. And he's writing down this account of Jesus' life and ministry. And you know, there's actually a time where one of Jesus' closest friends, there's Mary and Martha, who are sisters, and Lazarus. And Lazarus had actually died. But before he died, Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus because, you know, Jesus was known for healing people. He healed the sick, he healed strangers, he healed sinners, he healed people that that didn't deserve any kind of healing. They didn't deserve a second chance, but Jesus showed them grace and he healed them. And so they sent word. They probably weren't even worried at first. They sent word for Jesus. Hey, Lazarus is sick. In fact, he's like deadly sick. Like he could die. You should get back and heal him and help us. And you know what Jesus did when he got word about Lazarus? Nothing at first. He had business to finish where he was. And he didn't immediately come to Lazarus. It was several days before he ended up making it back to Lazarus. And by the time Jesus did finally make it back, Lazarus was already dead. And you can imagine Mary and Martha as their hope went, you know, to disappear, their hope disappeared, and they went probably to some despair and anger. And why didn't you? In fact, here's what happens when Jesus finally made his way there. Martha greets him, and here's what she says. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. And so you've been in the first part of that greeting, where she says, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And some of you've had bad things happen to you, and you've said, Jesus, if you were real, if you were really here, then this wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't have let me go through this. But here's the reality. You and I aren't the judge. We don't get to decide what is just and unjust. We don't get to decide what is good and what is bad, what happens and what doesn't. But Martha, even she's probably angry. This is a typical greeting. And she's dealing with sorrow and hurt, and she's mourning Lazarus' death. She says, but I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. She's put trust back in him. She still believed and trusted God. And what many of us are faced with when we go through storms in life, when we go through hard times, when we go through the tough circumstances, we ask the question, can I trust God? Does he know what he's doing? Does he see me in this circumstance? Does he really care about my life? Can we really trust God? And Martha, she says she did. And she believed in Jesus even though her brother died. Jesus didn't show up on time, but she still trusted in him. In fact, John tells us later, not only did Jesus just come, but he's not just someone who comes and can kind of see what's going on in your life. He actually cares about what's going on in your life. In fact, this is one of the most intimate parts of Scripture where we get to see the heart of God. For this brief verse, that's only 2 words. In verse 35, it says, Jesus wept. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that there's more to this life. He knew that there's the next life with God. He knew Lazarus was a good man. But yet, it didn't stop him from feeling the pain of that moment. And so, Jesus mourns with them. He wept. So if you're sitting here and you're wondering if Jesus is heartless or if he doesn't care, let me tell you, he does. And while you might feel sensitive during this tough season, or whenever this tough season does come your way, when you do get hit with the storms of life and you're wondering, does Jesus even care? The answer is absolutely 100%. Yes. He sees you and he cares. Especially when life gets hard, he never stops loving us. But the story's not over. In fact, Jesus, he comes up and he walks over to the tomb where Lazarus had been laid. And in that time, they kind of had to roll these big stones in front of the tombs. And often it was in some kind of cave or something like that. And so they get to Lazarus' tomb. And Jesus, he comes and he tells them to open the tomb. And you can just imagine their faces he's been dead for 4 days at this point. The smell in there will not be pleasant. But Jesus says, just trust me, just open the tomb. And so they open the tomb, they rolled away, and Jesus just said, hey, Lazarus, get up, come out here. And Lazarus does. He gets up, and they had the way they wrap people up when they buried them. It was kind of like a mummy. So you can imagine him just I don't even know. I've seen videos of what they think was Lazarus's tomb, and what it looked like. And there were stairs that go down into the I can't imagine if he's walking out like a zombie and jumping out, right? And I don't know what this looked like, or if he rips it and just climbs out, I don't know, but he comes out of the tomb, and everybody standing there is amazed and in awe, because now Jesus not only heals the sick, but he raises the dead. He has power over life and death. And Lazarus comes out, and there's rejoicing, and you can imagine just the relief and the hope and the joy that brought. And then we go on to verse 45. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. So because of that circumstance, because Lazarus died, because God allowed that to happen, more people were able to put their hope and their faith and their trust in him that they would not have done if Lazarus hadn't died. You follow what I'm going? God doesn't allow God doesn't make bad things happen so that he can get closer to you. But the reality is there's sin in this world and bad things do happen. But what God does is he allows that situation to either push you towards him or you can choose to push yourself away from him because of it. God takes those circumstances and he doesn't cause bad things to happen, but he does allow them in this life. And you know what? Those things bring us closer to God. God can use tough times to grow our faith. Tough times will happen. And when life gets hard, God, sometimes he intervenes. Sometimes he doesn't. But we can know that we can trust him. There's no pain or challenge so great that it keeps us from working in big ways, that it keeps God from working in big ways through your life. And so just as you kind of walk away with this, I want you to remember that you can always be honest with God. When Martha came up to Jesus to greet him, she was upset. She said, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. She was upset. She showed her anger to him. She was honest about her feelings. You can be honest with God. Say, God, this situation stinks. This situation is not fun. It's not fair, and I don't like it. You can be honest about how you feel. You can be honest with God. But secondly, I want you to believe. I want you to trust him. I want you to just simply pray, God, I trust you to grow my faith deeper in this situation. You know, in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus gets up and he gives his first sermon, and it's what's called the Sermon on the Mount. And at the very beginning of it, he gives what we call the Beatitudes. You know, blessed are those who. And he says, you know, if you want to be blessed, these are the people that are blessed. And, you know, a lot of times, especially in our hashtag culture, we say that a lot of things we're blessed because of a lot of things. Oh, got a new car, blessed. You know, oh, have awesome friends, blessed. Oh, great Thanksgiving with family, blessed. Right? And none of those things are bad. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, Jesus redefines what it means to be blessed. And it's not how we typically think of it. Now, if your goal is to live comfortably and happy, then sure, those things are blessings to you. But if your goal is to be closer and grow deep in your relationship with God, then those aren't necessarily blessings. What Jesus says are blessings are, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are those who are weak. Those who and he goes through this whole list. You can read it in Matthew chapter 5 when you leave here. But at the end of the day, we're blessed not because of all the good things we have, but because these circumstances, as tough as they are, they push us towards God. If we didn't encounter those storms, we would not run towards God and grow deeper in our trust and our relationship with him. We are blessed. And that's why I think James says, consider pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because that testing of your faith develops perseverance. It makes you grow deeper in your relationship with God that you wouldn't have if those things hadn't happened. So those things are actually blessings. So as you guys get ready to go to your small groups, I want you to think about this question. What's one tough thing that I'm going through in my life right now? It could be something as simple as like, man, I don't like math. Or it could be something like what was listed on these cards. What is one thing that you're going through right now that's really tough? I'm going to pray, and you guys will be dismissed to your groups.